Hi, and welcome to the Central California Winter Regional Conversation. I'm Julie Baker, and the Executive Director of Californians for the Arts and California Arts Advocates. And we'll be started in just a couple of minutes. We'll let some more folks come in the room. So excited to be in conversation with all of you today around unifying our voice for the arts, both at the state and local level, and to hear from you as well on what's happening for you within your region, on issues or pain points or problems that hopefully legislation or resources and budget and allocations and all those other things can help solve, and how we can lift that up in our work at California Arts Advocates and Californians for the Arts in representing your voices. And joined today by two amazing board members from our organization, Jennifer Lane from San Benito Arts Council and Kara Goger from Mariposa Arts Council. Welcome, welcome. And we can go into the next slide. We'll get a sense of kind of what we're up to today, and also welcoming Victoria Hamilton, our esteemed board president, who comes from San Diego and loves to zoom into all of our regional conversations so she also can understand what's happening at different levels or in different regions. So we'll go to the next slide, if we could. I just wanted to mention we lost a real warrior for the arts this last weekend, Larry Baza, a San Diego resident and someone who had been a champion within San Diego for decades for arts and social justice, who then recently was nominated. He had been nominated, been placed on the California Arts Council by the Senate Pro Tem Tony Atkins. He had just started his second term and had just received the position of chair by his fellow board members, when sadly Larry contracted COVID-19 and was not able to survive the virus. And so we're sad to say that Larry Baza has passed away. But we dedicate this meeting and all of the work that we're doing in 2021 to his legacy and to continue his mission to really champion arts and culture in the state of California. Go to the next slide. We'll get to the agenda here today. So we're just beginning in terms of our welcome. Again, thanks to everyone for showing up today. This is a meeting, so as soon as we stop sharing, you'll see actually everyone here. So if you can be on video, we appreciate it. We'd love to see you. We do want it to be a conversation too. So if you've got questions, comments, things that you want to bring up, please add them to the chat or raise your hand or interrupt, particularly me, because I tend to talk too much. So jump in and tell us what's going on. Like I said, this is a conversation. It's not meant to be passive. We really want to hear from you. And then we'll get, I'm actually going to do more of a state update than a federal update, just to kind of keep it kind of short and to the point. We'll get some local updates from some wonderful guest speakers that Kara will be introducing in a moment. Hopefully we'll get some conversation from this wonderful group of all of you from Central California, which is a huge region, as you can imagine. And, we may continue to make it into smaller regions as we go forward. We'll see what the desire and the needs are there. And then we'll give you a bit of a share on what's coming up in terms of Californians for the Arts programs. So I think that kind of gives you an overview. The meeting guidelines, as I said, if you would introduce yourself in the chat, acknowledge the indigenous land where you reside, be respectful and courteous of your fellow advocates. Be mindful of your own input. No long speeches. That would be me. Mute your audio when you're not speaking, and use the raise hand function if you'd like to speak or put questions in the chat. But again, if you're feeling like you're not being seen or heard, please just, start to talk and say, hey, I want to say something. All right, so that kind of gives you a sense of where we are. I think we'll go ahead and I will now share my screen if Jade Alicia will let me do that. And so here we go. We're also going to do some polls, if you wouldn't mind filling those out. This really helps us. We're doing them in every region. And so it's aggregate data to give us a sense of who's in the room, as well as what are some of the things that you're struggling with in a snapshot in time right now. What are the things that you're doing in terms of your own potential advocacy, and what more can we do to support you? So we'll continue to have those throughout the conversation. So again, I'm going to try to quickly highlight kind of the stuff we're working on, as I probably don't need to explain to all of you. California's arts and entertainment industry has been severely impacted by the closures due to COVID-19. We have lost about 2/3 of the jobs in the creative industries and a $43 billion in revenue loss to the state of California. And what we also have seen is that we're actually the largest percentage of job loss in California. These are Department of Labor statistics. These are from August, so I would imagine it's only continued to decline. And well beyond the second largest sector, which is leisure and hospitality. And again, why these are important is that it really helps us in our case making to legislators to say, we've been disproportionately impacted. This is, severe, and we need support. I wanted to give you some update on some recent state advocacy news, kind of how we develop our case making, build awareness, and how we get to a place where we hopefully can be seen, not only in terms of impact, but also in terms of how we can support California's recovery. So we like to say we put the art in restart, and that there is no California recovery without the creative industries. We do create a lot of social media imagery as well. If you're not following us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, we invite you to do that. Twitter today, for example, Kevin McCarthy, congressional representative, and said that he didn't feel that the NEA dollars were necessary. That was in the $1.9 trillion federal package. And so we quickly tweeted in response to that actually it employs California, the industries are 5.1 million jobs in the United States in the creative industries. And absolutely, it's a good investment. It's a high return investment, the arts. What we also did this year is we put together an assembly committee hearing at the state, again, on the arts. The committee was called Reopening Arts Safely. We had 18 different presenters, and we were invited to testify as well. So I was there, and as well as a number of our board members. We had a wide range of folks from small organizations, individual artists, and some of the larger entertainment and live events industries like Live Nation. Out of that, some really good things have already started to come, because when we build awareness, then they see that there's a problem that they need to solve. And one of the problems is, of course, that we, again, disproportionate impact due to the closures. And so if you may have heard that as of actually today, I believe the governor will be signing the early action budget proposal to respond to COVID-19. And in there is over $2 billion for small business relief. Inside of that $2 billion is specific pot of money, and we are the only industry that got called out in this $2 billion for nonprofit cultural institutions. I want you to recognize that is a really big advocacy win for all of us. All of us. Advocacy is collective. It never happens with one organization or one person. Over 350 people signed one letter asking for this 50 million, and over 300 individuals sent in letters, as well as direct lobbying, which we do to offices. So that package will be coming out in about 4 to 5 weeks. We'll be releasing more information about that as it is available, and you can receive grants for up to $25,000 from that pot of money. We've done a lot to try and build media coverage about what's happening in the nation and in the state. There was a big New York Times article that, for example, that talked about the need for the Biden administration to really include arts, maybe even create a Department of Arts and Culture. That concept around the seat at the table that the arts often do not have, more arts integration strategies. And in, for example, that New York Times article, there was a link on the online version to our toolkit that we created when they use statistics around what's happening in California. So again, you never know kind of when you put stuff out there where it's going to land, but the more we build awareness, the more impactful we can all be. And finally, I just wanted to mention that on Thursday, we'll be launching with the Otis report that we use on the creative economy a lot of times in our advocacy. We'll be launching our own impact survey report on workers as well as arts organization with the Otis report in February. Quickly, here are our advocacy priorities. One of the things that came out of our last round in August of reopening of regional conversations was the lack of reopening guidelines for the performing arts industries. If you look at the blueprint for a safer economy, which is the tiers and the industry guidelines, there are none, except to say that you can talk to your local officials to create something, and you could have potentially at the most minimal tier 100 people outdoors, and that's it. But there's no guidelines for it. So we've been fighting since about July for these guidelines. We have Adrien Nazarian, who's an assembly member from Los Angeles County, who's going to be putting together what they call a member letter that will be distributed around the Capitol, or the building they call it here in Sacramento, to try and really push the administration and California Department of Public Health to create reopening guidelines for our sector. We are not saying we want to reopen when it's not safe to do so. That is not what we're asking. We are asking for parity with other industries, as well as a roadmap to what it will look like for us to reopen, what costs are associated with that, what is expected of us. But we want to be able to at least see ourselves in the tier to get back to work. In addition, one of the things that we've also highlighted in the assembly hearing was that we are systemically undercapitalized in terms of public funding for the arts in the state of California. If you've been around this issue for a while, you know that for about 10 years, we were funding only at $1 million in the state of California. Due to the work of our organization and leaders like Larry Baza, who we mentioned, and Victoria Hamilton, who's on this call, we were able to increase that to 26 million. But in a state that is as large as California with 40 million people, we are less than $1 per capita per funding for the arts, which means we're actually currently around 73 cents. So the long story short, we are now have a budget letter introduced for $1 for the arts to increase the funding to 40 million in ongoing funding. We'll see where that lands, but it's at least being introduced, which means it'll be talked about, which means that, again, we start to highlight the impact and the issues for our sector. The other good and exciting thing that we have this year coming is the California Creative Corps. There's an introduction in the governor's budget for a pilot program for $15 million. And in that pilot, it includes specifically how can artists who are 63% nationwide unemployed be employed right now in service to public health, but not in a sort of like, we're not going to hire Amy Schumer to do it. How do we do it in a local, culturally specific way, and where local artists are employed through your trusted arts organizations to deliver these types of messages? Right now, it's about social distancing and mask wearing, and that it's safe to take the vaccine, things like that. At the same time, we've also have legislation now introduced, just got introduced on Friday. The way the legislative cycle works is that the bills had to be introduced by February 21st. Most of them are what they call placeholder language. So if you go to look at SB Senate Bill 628 right now, it's just the beginning language of what we're looking at in terms of California Creative Corps. You have to get it in by a certain time, and then they start to develop it and they work on it, and it all works out until about September. We're also in a 2-year legislative cycle. In other words, it gets introduced now, you might be held in committee, and then it get reintroduced the second year. So we'll see what happens. But again, what's important is we're starting to talk about artists as a viable and important workforce in California, as well as arts organizations and the arts and creative industries as integral to recovery and integration into other sectors. And then funding to reopen safely. Once we get those guidelines, I'm going to guess that there's going to be some extra expenses for us to retrofit our venues and other things that we're going to need. So we're going to likely need to fight for that. I thought I had 10 minutes and I started at 2:05, right? So she said I'm approaching, I think I've got 1 more minute. So it's 2:15, I'm watching it this time. So this is my last slide. Advocacy priorities, continued federal and state stimulus funding. So in other words, when the funding comes from the federal government, which we're looking at a $1.9 trillion package right now, we want to make sure that it's actually also addressing the ongoing problems that we're having for our sector, and that more monies are given to arts and culture as we go forward. And then here are some other things, just sort of longer term. We need to look at infrastructure and employment systems to support living wage and housing and food security and mental health for artists. We need to radically reimagine our business models, hiring practices, board recruitment policies, resources, and programs centered in racial and cultural equity. We need to look at program if we're going, if a lot of things are going to transform to digital, we're going to need to look at that, and technical training and support. And then finally, AB5, which has been something we've talked a lot about. There are some bills that have been introduced. One of them is Senate Bill 805. The other one is now Assembly Bill 1227. Those are specific to exemptions for performing arts. We'll see where that lands, but it's a place to start as well. So I'm actually going to stop right there because otherwise I'm going to go on too long. I've got other slides, but I can just tell you that we've got some great things coming up, which we'll share at the end as well. And my heart got in there. And if I just want to also just say, I'm really want to hear from you. So if there's things that don't make sense to what I just talked about, please ask, or if you have more questions about them or want to learn more, ask me. And then also here's my email and my cell phone. You're welcome to call me anytime and say, I don't understand, or I want to ask you, or I want you to do this. And I'd be happy to address that. So there you go.
Awesome, Julie. My gosh. I always feel so impressed with how you can condense so much information about where the state of the state is, and then also all the advocacy efforts that are going on in such a short amount of time, and convey so much information. So thank you for that. And also thank you for all the work that you are doing specifically on this. As Julie kind of gives us the big statewide snapshot, I have invited 3 people from our region of the state to kind of drill down on the more personal side, or the more organizational level of what is going on here in Central California. I have with me today Dan Pisano from the Good Company Players in Second Space Theater in Fresno, Tony Sanders, who's an arts educator at Big Picture Charter School in Fresno, and he's the founder of Shine Theater, and Alex Espinoza Kulik, who's the executive director of Corazon del Pueblo in Santa Maria. And I'm going to just talk with them individually about where they're at and what they've been doing this year, how they're adapting. And I'm hoping we kind of find some resonant threads in what they're going through and how they're pivoting to everything we're doing. Oh, another poll. If you could log in or click on that, that would be great. I'm going to start with Dan. Hey, Dan, can you wave and say hi? There's Dan.
Hi. Yeah.
Dan, can you share with us just a little bit about your work, what you've been doing in Fresno, and how the last year has impacted what you're doing?
Well, we're Good Company Players. We're in our 47.1 season because we got into one show till March 15th. We're the first to close and probably be the last to open, unlike, I'm sure, like everyone. We would normally be doing 12 shows a year in 2 different theaters, 6 per space. We would be doing 6 pre-shows with our junior company training program. And Tony and I are working right now on a project that we would do live for all of the 5th graders in Fresno Unified, Founding Fathers and Mothers, which we changed by editing into a virtual performance for this year. So we would be doing a lot, but since 15th of March and really since June 1st, we got the first PPP, but I had to lay off my entire staff. Most of my staff, a lot of people have been with us 30 years. So we're like everybody else, but that's the personal side.
Well, I mean, I think especially with a production company like yours, you're feeling it a lot harder than other places that can pivot as well, a little more easily. So you did get a PPP loan. Any other sort of practical or financial or mental kind of spiritual resources you've been able to draw on this past year?
Well, again, to share, I think all of us, especially, we're not a nonprofit, so we've never asked for help. For 47 seasons, we've done it on our own. Ours are strictly butts and seats. And so learning how to ask for help was one of the hardest things. And learning how to apply for help was a killer. I really thank Lilia Chavez from our Fresno Arts Council. She fielded probably about 50 phone calls from us on how do we fill this thing out to get. So we've had SBA help and the PPP. And we've had some state help, a little bit of state help, and the city, we got $55,000 from the city. But I have to tell you, Tony's on, and whether he's on, would be on, it wouldn't matter. When I knew we were going to make it, I have props. This is $220 from a lemonade stand that Tony's daughters ran in our behalf. And it's framed in my office, and it says, "In case of emergency, break the glass." And so for all of us, so much of the time we're trying to prove we're essential to all of these people. You're filling out this crap and saying we're essential, we need help. Julie, you said it so beautifully. And then the light came on that how we knew we were essential is everyone from our theater family across the country and our season ticket holders. And they all told us the most important thing. We were essential to them. We have been essential to them. You know, I don't believe you can take credit. I think credit has to be given. But when it is given in a way that tells you you have made a difference to their lives and continue to make a difference to your life, you know the show's going to go on, and it will.
Oh man, you almost made me cry right there.
Yeah. Well, I'm over crying because, and everyone will tell you the story. You get over crying. We work together so hard as a team, and you know, people overuse the word family, but it's not about crying. It's facing the right direction. We know we're going to do it.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, thank you for sharing that. And when we spoke on the phone earlier, and as I'm hearing you speak again, I mean, I think that the words we say and the messages we put out there and the work that, you know, kind of what we're trying to communicate is one thing, but what your story demonstrates is the long-term work that you're doing in the community. The work speaks for itself, and you know, you've built that in, and I think that's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Wow, and you did it just perfectly at 5 minutes. Tony, I'm going to move to you now. Again, Tony is an arts educator at a Big Pictures Charter School in Fresno, and also the founder and director of Shine Theater. And Tony, I'm going to ask you the same question. Can you tell me a little bit about your work and how the last year has impacted what you're doing?
Absolutely. Thank you first and foremost for the opportunity, Kara. I really appreciate it. We are kind of, we're not the antithesis of GCP and the wonderful work that Dan and his team are doing. But it's great to kind of look at both companies because we're not in the same boat. We're in the same ocean, but different boats. And we're a smaller company, all run completely by volunteers. So as you said, you know, we were able to pivot a little easier, I think, than other companies because our overhead is lower. I'm that oddball who on March 14th woke up and went, "Oh my God, this is awesome! There are so many more things we can do now. We can, you know, I love this virtual world. We can jump into it. We can flip everything virtual and just make things happen in that world." And it's kind of exactly what we did. So whereas we would normally do 4 or 5 shows on our main stage, we did none. We kept rehearsals going for a while until it was obvious that, you know, 14 days for the curve to flatten was not really going to happen. The reality set in of that. And we just got busy about, you know, about the work. Like, okay, how do we, even being a nonprofit, we still have always operated off of butts in the seats. We haven't gotten a lot of grants, but that's, again, it falls back on us being an all volunteer organization. So we don't necessarily have that infrastructure in place to move on those as quickly as we'd like to. We're working hard to change that, but that is our reality right now. So we started off doing lots of virtual cabarets. to try to raise awareness of our situation and to raise funds in order to keep the lights on for whatever, storage rental and insurance and those sort of things that we had to keep going. We got really, really creative, which was my charge to all of to the entire creative team. It's like, look, we are creatives. Get creative. Find ways to make this happen. We did flockings where, for $20, we'd go to someone's yard at your request and completely litter their front lawn with pink flamingos, with a huge sign that says "You've been flocked," and that was great. And we had a lot of fun with that and raised some awareness of who we are, and that really allowed us to just keep going. And we just swung from one fundraiser to the next to keep it going. We took our summer camp, which we've always done in person, a 2-week summer camp. We condensed it down to 1-week sessions and did them all virtually. And that platform was awesome. That was so successful that we took our training academy and flipped that virtual as well this past fall. We created other content streams. I created a talk show online, Facebook Live, called Acting Up, where I would interview a lot of people amazingly, from the Fresno Central Valley area, who are now, working in Broadway, or working on a national level. And we began to bring them into the conversation. We had a podcast. One of our great guests was Dan himself, highlighting a lot of what the local artists are doing to make it through the pandemic. We did Workshop Wednesdays, where we would give voice to new playwrights, and we do a playwright series every Wednesday. Valley Theater League is one of the greatest initiatives that I take the most pride in, where we created this collective of theaters in the Central Valley, a place for all those creatives to be able to come together and talk about what it is that they're going through and figure out ways that we could strategize to move everyone through that, pool our resources to perhaps expand the marketing that we're all doing. And we're continuing to grow that out and find the identity of the Valley Theater League, but we're really, really proud that that exists as an option for our creatives. And then we took what probably is one of my pride and joys. We have Sensory Friendly Theater. It's a program that we do where we take one performance out of every title that we do, and we change that show around to allow for families who have children who are on the autistic spectrum to be able to come in and watch theater, because they don't ordinarily do so. They're ostracized, they're alienated, they're made to feel bad because their child is triggered. And we just, when I heard that story, it broke my heart. And I said, we have to be able to do something. So we had that program in place. And the fact that we don't have shows now, we had to find something else to do. So we're taking that entire program and creating new content that we can upload onto our channel, our YouTube channel, to allow those families to still have access for their kids, to provide things that could still entertain their kids in the way that they need to be entertained and engaged. So we feel really, really proud about that. We're very, very excited about that work. And somewhere in there, Kara, we can now begin to look at how do we do our next season. We just did a reading last night of a musical that I'm very excited about, and we'll find a way to do that in whatever parameters they give us to operate in. But just to repeat what Dan said, that I started the hashtag almost immediately that said art is essential, and you can't. And it was it was so evident to me, because as I looked around, look at the sheer numbers. How many more subscriptions did Disney Plus and Netflix add on, as a result of this? Because where did people go in times of need? They go to the artists. They look to arts in order to lift their spirits, to engage them, to enlighten them, to educate them. And I said it from the beginning, it's like, you can't shut this down. We can't shut ourselves down. We're not going to wait for the government to tell us how we can operate. We're going to figure out new ways to operate, to make sure that we are staying committed to our community, because art is essential. It is necessary. There's value and there's worth attached to the work that we do.
Tony, thank you so much. I'm so impressed with how quickly and with so much agility you were able to take all your programming and put it into different safe spaces and retain the essence and the impact of the work that you're doing. that's just amazing, and you're to be applauded. I want to or need to move on to Alex real quick, but I just wanted to ask real quick in a little nutshell, is there anything that you've drawn on just to kind of keep your spirits buoyed, or even financially to keep you afloat? What have you kind of been able to lean on?
Threefold. Really quickly, my creative team is awesome. As volunteers, the time that they give up out of their lives to make sure that the art still happens is to be commended. I ask them to do the impossible, and they do it each and every time. I'm so pleased to have them and honored to work alongside of them. SEL became a big part of my life this summer. So I went and got certified as a social emotional wellness counselor. So that has been kind of saving myself in order to make sure that I am whole enough to be able to take care of my community as well. And yeah, I think those are the two biggest things
Great.
that we've been relying on. Yeah, indeed. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, and congratulations on all that you're doing and your ability to be so agile. It's very impressive.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and then I want to introduce Alex Espinoza Kulik. Am I saying your last name correctly?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Alex is the executive director of Corazon del Pueblo in Santa Maria. And Alex, I'm going to start with the same question I asked Dan and Tony. Can you tell us a little bit about your work and how you've had to adapt this year?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. Um, uh, Corazon del Pueblo is the Cultural and Creative Arts Center of the Santa Maria Valley, and we're a relatively new organization. So we had only been around for about a year before the pandemic hit. So in some ways, that's really been an advantage for us because as we're growing, we've just been able to grow into that new space that we're all in and start new things just in the new normal. And then like everybody else, we've just been pivoting and figuring out, how do we do all this stuff online? How can we, lift up the community and do the work that we're doing and bring folks together, give people a sense of hope and pride, and, recreate as best we can in safe conditions, that feeling of community and that feeling of sharing culture together. And so some of the work that we do is really based in our mission to serve the community and to be engaged with efforts for justice for our community, especially. Santa Maria, for folks who might not be familiar, is a predominantly Latinx community with a large agricultural industry. And so one of our big projects has been really highlighting our farm workers and collaborating with organizations that serve farm workers to try and really holistically support this truly essential workforce during this time. And so we started the Somosa Cinciales campaign, which means we are essential, to reflect that message for the community. And so that included working with a young local artist to create a mural in our downtown space. And then also a small team worked with our local farms to highlight with portraits and a video project the stories of farm workers who are out working right now, and the efforts of a local group, the UFW Foundation, United Farm Workers Foundation, that's doing a lot of direct service with farm workers right now. And so we feel really honored because we get to lift that work up and share that with the community, and we've had opportunities to collaborate and bring that out to folks. And also feel really lucky that we work in a community and we have these strong ties with community groups. So we've been able to, for example, partner with those groups when they're doing food drives or when they're handing out supplies and PPE to also hand out art supplies to underscore that message that everyone's saying, that art is essential, right? It's one of these essential ways that we take care of ourselves. And so, it was really amazing to get a lot of donations from the community to support that effort and then to be able to share that out and bring art to the people during this time when we can't bring the people to us necessarily. And so those are some of the projects that we've been working on. We've also really responded to the need to address these issues of health in our community. COVID has really hit Santa Maria in a bad way. Our farm workers are among the most vulnerable of any group when it comes to all kinds of disparities And so we've been really cognizant of that and really focused on how we can be supporting our healthcare workers, and especially because our organization works at a grassroots level, supporting those who are really directly giving services to those who would otherwise not receive them. So we partnered with Cal Poly SLO with their Center for Health Research on the Mi Gente Nuestra Salud initiative. And that's building a movement for health ownership here in town. And so that was a great way to share our work in the context of health, and also to link what we're doing and how we're lifting up local artists to the important health needs and the stories that are affecting healthcare in this moment.
Alex, thank you so much for sharing that. When I spoke with you last week, I was so impressed with how you were leveraging arts for the service of the community well beyond just the field of arts, which you talked about quite a bit there. What have you been able to tap into in terms of like financial or just emotional resources for getting you through this time?
Yeah, so on both fronts, I think like really the communities that we work with and the partners that we have. So we've gotten support from Santa Barbara County, and they've also been able to, we've received CARES funds through them as well. The partnership with Cal Poly also included funding. And then we work with Planned Parenthood, the promotores, the community health workers here locally. And so we're collaborating with them on similar efforts to link specifically sexual and reproductive health to arts and creativity. And so it's been really helpful because, you know, the sort of lines of funding, we've been able to tap into some of the efforts that are focused broadly on community infrastructure and community support and community building. But those relationships and connections too, I think have been so vital to keep us going during this time. And we're meeting on Zoom, and we're you know, trying to share creativity and share that work. And so I think I just count my lucky stars for all of the folks who show up and share in the excitement of the work and just being able to continue it each and every day.
Awesome. Alex, thank you so much for sharing that. When I was speaking with Tony and Alex and Dan last week, I was so impressed with what I was hearing all of them say, and how so much of what they're saying is things I've heard resonate throughout all my conversations I've been having with people over the last year. So I think that kind of is a good like segue into opening it up to a larger conversation with everyone here. And I'm hoping our panelists will be happy to answer questions you might have for them, or we can just talk broadly about what we're doing. And as Julie mentioned, the pain points that we're feeling, the resources that we've been able to access, and I'll let Julie and Jennifer kind of jump into and help guide the conversation. But I just want to thank Dan and Tony and Alex for sharing all that and kind of opening this up.
I'd just like to echo what Kara said, and how inspiring all three of you are in terms of your resiliency and your adaptability and your creativity, and how that really is such a through line to what the California Creative Corps is about. Many of the programs that you're talking about, Alex, Tony, you know, that you're already doing is that is the nut and the kernel of what that program is about, which is really to recognize artists and arts organization as essential, to socialize that at the legislative layer, so that it's not just something that we continue to do without funding on a volunteer basis, because that's not sustainable, nor is that then really truly recognizing our value. And so when we start to actually see the intersection and start to get to a place where you should be getting contracts from the government for this type of work, versus it being you're scrambling to try and get the funding to make it work, or you're doing it as a volunteer, that is not what we want for the future of arts and for arts workers. And so that's kind of why that program, even though it's really in its infancy, and if I had a crystal ball, I'm going to tell you that it's probably going to sit in committee this year. But if we all work together to uplift the type of stories that we just heard today and share the impact. And the only one thing I want to add is any measurable data you can share is really critical in terms of, does it ever create jobs? Does it show other healthier outcomes in your community? Are there direct measurable things that you can show that we can then utilize in our development of the case making to say why this is so critical for taxpayer dollars to go to these types of programs. So thinking a little bit along those lines. Jada, did you want to launch the next survey question? And that will also maybe help us to get a little bit into conversation, but I don't want to, again, I talk too much. So everybody else, jump in. I see you there, Colton, others, Jackie, Nina, some of the folks I see who share with us on social media. Jump in, Catherine. How are things going in your neck of the woods, everybody? Tim, I see you, Tim. How are you? Nice to see you. So yeah, so other things people want to share, Andrea. Andrea, please tell us about what's going on in your world. Where are you? There she is. Unmute, jump on, join the conversation.
Julie, are you speaking with me, Andrea Hansen?
Yes, you messaged that I will share, and I'm like, great, go for it. Sorry.
No, I meant I'd be happy to share with you, but I'm also happy to share with the group. I understand arts legislation really well, and in fact, I'm Andrea, by the way. I'm from Kern Dance Alliance. I'm located in Bakersfield, and Kern Dance Alliance is we'll be celebrating 6 years this May, and we advocate for dance and the arts in Kern County. We are sort of a two-pronged organization. One piece of our organization supports dancers and dance organizations in Kern County with grants and scholarships. And then the other side of our organization links dance with the community to explain to the greater community why dance and movement are important. So we have a math and dance program that teaches girls math through dance, pre-algebra, geometry, calculus. We have a program that teaches children how to read through dance. We have an adaptive dance program for people with disabilities. We have several dance and movement therapy programs for cancer patients and survivors, Alzheimer's and dementia patients, as well as a pediatrics program. So that's kind of the piece where we identify with the community and use dance as a link to keep our community moving, the best way to describe. And we have lots of data to show how our programs have impacted our community on different levels. So Julie, to your point about going to the state, luckily we are very close with our legislators in Kern County on a state and federal level. They hear us, they know what we are doing. We're in their faces all the time. In fact, Vince Fong, Assemblyman Vince Fong, is one of my really good friends. And in fact, I was just texting with him. I was just texting with him while we were in this meeting. But he of course serves on the budget allocations committee, so that's an important place to be in. Yep. But Vince and Shannon Grove and Kevin McCarthy, they are all very familiar with our organization, the work we're doing in our community and how we're impacting our community. And we know that advocacy for the arts is one of the most important avenues to make ourselves successful. So Julie, happy to share that information with you, and hi to everybody. Happy to be here with you.
You're going to be my new best friend, because I can tell you that Kevin McCarthy is a tough one. And he, like I said, he tweeted today about why we need funding for the NEA. So if you're on Twitter, you might want to just remind him of how it's impactful in his own community to receive public funding for the arts. Because at the end of the day, as Andrea was just saying, is that it's really important to localize your advocacy as much as possible. They are going to be beholden to their constituents and care deeply about the success of their own local communities. So thank you for sharing that. I look forward to connecting with you further. That's exciting. Thank you. And we met with Vince Fong recently. Others want to share out anything that you're feeling struggles with? We can start to look at again at the poll, but
Nina, your hand raised.
Great, thank you, Nina.
Sure, I can report. I'm with Opera Santa Barbara, and we are excited to be launching our program that we began in the fall called Operation Eurydice, named after the Greek nymph who was rescued from Hades by the sound of music from Orpheus. And our work has been collaborating with other musicians throughout Santa Barbara and doing pop-up musical performances in and around restaurants, which are the only allowed venue for having live music. So we have taken the generous funds that our donors gave us, and we are hiring artists of all disciplines with our studio opera artist and curating events around town, again, both to get opera into our community, but also to support other artists. So that program just went live this week. We're playing at venues like the Pickle Room. We're performing from our balconies on State Street and in front of the Good Lion and Granada theaters. With regard to education, we have adopted our opera program in school to TikTok. The only way we could get into online learning was to try to adapt a platform that was very easy for teachers. So we're teaching opera concepts via TikTok. That will be released actually next week as well. So it took us a while, but we are beginning to just go out into our communities in the only ways we can. And we're very excited about it.
Love it. I love it. And I love the TikTok. Is that for the teachers or more the students who are accessing it on TikTok, I would imagine?
Well, we're hoping both. I'm learning to access TikTok a lot more myself. So I think it's been an eye-opening platform and actually a lot more fun than Twitter sometimes.
Oh, I'm sure. That's terrific. Nina, thank you so much for sharing. Others who'd like to talk about what they're doing to either reach their audiences, stay in business, keep artists employed? Jim.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Core with Madara County Arts Council, and I have to tell you that the stories about live theater certainly resonated. I've been involved in theater for most of my adult life. I was part of Playhouse Merced in Merced for 7 seasons, and so I really, my heart just pours out to you guys who have the live performance spaces, and I get it. I was talking to my friend Jack Souza up at the Prospect Theater Project in Modesto, and they've had to postpone their latest season again. And one of the things he said was, as much as he'd like to try to do things differently, at the heart of it, live theater is a live experience, and trying to shift things online, he found to be very tricky, because he said, when it comes right down to it, we're not really a film company, we're a theater company. So it just really resonates with me. Here at the Arts Council, we've had our share of things going on. Our programming has been impacted through the schools, and we've been finding ways to continue that. We have an ongoing guitar class where all the students are masked up and physically distanced in our classroom. We just launched an art school in the same way, where the kids are also are distanced and masked up. And our teacher, who has a background in fine arts, has been doing a fantastic job with that. It's a 10-week program that we're holding here at the Circle Gallery. We opened up a gallery show in January, and so people are trickling in. If they want to come in smaller groups, we allow that. Again, everybody masked up. We have hand sanitizer on the site, and then we're going to slowly shift that onto a virtual platform, so that those who feel like they don't want to come out and come in can have the opportunity to see some of the work. But with our art gallery, it's the same kind of thing. People, even the artists, will say, you really can't get a sense of what it's like unless you're here looking at it, and that is so true. But we're finding ways to to make it work during this crazy time. So I just wanted to share some of those feelings. Give a shout out to my fellow theatrical venue people. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim, for sharing. It's true. I love what you said about it's not a film company, we're a theater company. And I think that it's so true. I think we're all adapting to do what we need to do to to deliver these much needed programs for everyone's social and emotional health and wellness during this isolation time and challenging moments, with so many people passing due to COVID, as well as all the other impacts of it within our communities. But it is true, it never replaces getting together. And so I look forward to those moments when we can all get back together again. Other folks, oh, Catherine, your hand is up. Please join the conversation.
Okay. Thanks for letting me speak. As a fallout from COVID, I'm the city arts administrator because we lost that position in a budget freeze. But what we're trying to do, and we're going to launch it next week, is modeled off of the City of Santa Monica Art of Recovery program. So we're going to launch it. We're doing it in conjunction with our Arts Council, who has a grants program. So we're trying to avoid setting up another round of infrastructure on that. And then we're going to use the inclusivity and environmental justice and health and safety and economic recovery as themes. But what we're going to do is request LOIs and then pay stipends to the ones that are competitively ranked the highest, so that artists or organizations would receive a $1,500 stipend to work with us, both collectively through some classes with the Arts Council and individually with city staff, to meet our programming priorities, so that they get paid for the work of developing the LOI into a full grant proposal. And we're hoping that then I can use those proposals to more efficiently program the funds that we have. And in the past, it's been one person, kind of a city arts manager, programming our funds, and that's been slow. So we're in kind of a good position that we have some funds available. But what I'm hoping is that with this portfolio, it's we're calling it City Arts Recovery Design Pilot Grant Program. With this portfolio of approximately 20 LOIs, I can market or broker to get the funding for them, and also kind of program them out so that the city funds can be most efficiently programmed, and that there's more community involvement in the decision-making of it. Because we're going to recruit panelists from property owners in our downtown core to arts organizations, and kind of broaden the selection pool from artists to community members to evaluate these ideas. And we're really looking forward to what we're going to get. And I'm even thinking that this portfolio of LOIs will be a piece of art in itself, because it'll be the best ideas coming out of our community to respond to what we think right now are the biggest challenges. Of course, you turn around tomorrow and there's another challenge. But so that maybe if this program works in a year and a half or so, if we've got these projects out of the way, we'll pick other themes that really resonate with our community. So wish me luck.
Catherine, that sounds amazing. And I love the equitable application of how to develop funding opportunities, that in the process and of the LOIs that you're actually paying people. That's so wonderful, and obviously, not done enough. So thank you for recognizing that. I also, again, think it's such a great parlay into the California Creative Corps. These are the things, it's happening, and Shannon's program in Santa Monica are examples of it. There's others around the state that are currently happening. Again, the concept is you would be able to apply then to the California Creative Corps if there's appropriations for it, to be able to fund what you're doing in these types of city programs. So it's very exciting to see all of us we're all kind of working on parallel paths. And this is part of why we love to get together in this way. I'm so inspired by so many of you today. Thank you so much. This is so good for me in the meetings that I have. Jennifer, you have your hand up.
Oh, yes. Let's see, there we go. Catherine, I'm Jennifer, San Benito County Arts Council, and also on the board of Californians for the Arts. But after hearing Catherine, I wanted to chime in too, that we're a small rural arts council, but we do have a pot of funding for regranting, and my board has decided to use that funding for an art and recovery grant program. So we're going to launch it very soon, and it's the same concept based on the city of Santa Monica. And I'm so glad I can look next door to Santa Cruz and maybe pilfer some of your language a bit, but it'll be focused on art pairings with businesses, other nonprofit organizations doing on art recovery focused projects in public health and safety, education, the environment, mental health, those kinds of things. And so it's also very strategic for us because we know we're hoping that the California Creative Corps is coming down the pipeline. So this will give us an opportunity to pilot it here locally ourselves and hopefully get ourselves ready for another pot of funding coming down from the state level. So we're really excited about that. If I may, I also kind of had a question for the group because as I was listening to our amazing panelists, I was hearing too a little bit how I think as arts organizations, we're often kind of doing stuff as lone wolves or with our group of supporters. And I'm curious to know how many of you have been working closely with, you know, community foundations, chambers of commerce. Have there been other partners that are advocating for you or with you for arts funding? Because I'm also hearing a bit tangentially, sometimes we have what are perceived to be competing needs, where chambers might actually kind of step in and say, as arts organizations, you do not qualify for this funding. I've heard of counties that are saying, you do not qualify for this pot of funding. So I'd be curious to know, in our group here, have any of you been successful partnering with directly with your county, again, with private foundations, chambers of commerce, and if not, what can we do as an arts sector to build those relationships and make sure that they see us as legitimate, you know, business nonprofit partners?
So while you guys are thinking about answering that question, I just wanted to alert you that we have another poll going. We have about 4 minutes left, and we, because I think we're just doing this in an hour. Some of them are 90 minutes, but I think this one's an hour. So, but I can stay a little bit longer if anyone wants to continue the conversation. But so please go ahead and fill that. This helps us to understand kind of where we are on advocacy efforts. We also would ask your permission if we could do a photo of all of us. If you don't want to be on it, just turn off your video. If you want to be a part of it, then keep your video on. We will do a gallery view so we can make sure that we see everyone, and we'll take Jade Alicia. There she is. They are going to go ahead and take that picture. So everybody, are we ready? 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Thank you. You guys look fantastic. And so I think we're getting to the end of the poll there. Jennifer, I can just tell you from the state level, you know, for example, we met with California Travel, who are the lobbyists for Visit California. We've met with the California Restaurant Association. We are trying to make the connections with community and economic development and recovery with like business sectors. You know, I think one of the things that is often challenging for the arts is, and this is again why there's so much importance in creating language that everyone starts to recognize is that we're a workforce and we're an industry. And so for so long, I think we've been thought of as like a cause versus an industry. And I think the shift that we're finally making is that I think between the coalition building that we're doing with for-profit, nonprofit, individual arts workers, cultural organizations, and everybody in between, that we're coming in force. And I think the other thing that is the silver lining, and I think today you heard so many silver linings, that we're also learning is that we can't live without the arts. And I think that we always said it, but I think in this last year, people went, oh my God, they were right. I really actually can't live without the arts. And so I think that there is this opportunity that we have right now that, if I can say anything as the statewide advocacy organization, that I hope we inspire you to, if you're not putting advocacy as one aspect of what you do in your daily life, please include it. I know it's a lot to ask you to do one more thing, but even if on the simplest of levels, you make a phone call to your local elected and say, this is who we are. What are they? Can I speak to the person who manages the arts portfolio? And what are you doing? What is your member or your person you work for doing for the arts? Simple, like, even that, or you can share our templates. You can be part of Advocacy Week in April. We'll be doing Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month during April as well. You'll hear more about that. If advocacy is something that's really new to you, Andrea, it's not new for, but there might be others on the call that it is, we really want to demystify it. And we want to make it as easy as possible for you. We'll be offering an Advocacy 101 training, a government training. It isn't rocket science, I can tell you. It is about relationship development, which you all do on a daily basis. It's just a different type of relationship. And they are there for you. They are your electeds. So we hope that you'll join us in that. And as we're finishing up this last poll, we'll probably then go ahead and end that one, get the fourth one in before everyone has to exit for their next meeting. I'm sure we're all on Zooms back-to-backs. And is there anybody else who wants to add in any wonderful last words? Because I told you, I talk a lot. Yes, Colton.
Yeah, hey, Colton Dennis with the Merced County Arts Council. We manage the Multicultural Arts Center, which is a 3-story building. So I have, performance space and gallery space and classroom space. And we've had in the past a nice relationship with our local NAACP, but it just seems like during this time, we have a deeper connection. We've connected more, even though most of it's been virtual, but we've created things like conversations on race, where we talk about literature, history, culture, and arts and music, but we do that with talking about what we're going through as a country right now, and trying to have conversations on that and try to bring people in. We have guest speakers and such, and so that's been really cool. And we do that once a month. And then we also started Veterans of Color, where we celebrate our veterans of color here in Merced County. We created a huge mural for that in celebration of those that responded. It got families involved, so kids did drawings of their veterans and loved ones and stuff like that. So that was really cool. And then this last Friday, we had a 24-hour project. Originally, it was supposed to be, of course, live. So we wanted live music, some theatrical performances, but we had to record it, and we did it all on we tried to do it on YouTube, but we eventually had to do it through a Zoom link. But it was a really great way to connect that we hadn't connected before. And with our education programs, all of our classes have been cut, but we've done everything virtually. And we've connected more like with United Way. We're doing a woke project of reading books, of being inclusionary books and cultural books, so children can see themselves in those books. And also the first time working with our county library for future projects, and they have some county funding, so they're able to fund our material and fund the time for my education director. And so those kind of connections were really kind of vital during this time. And I think we're building relationships that will continue after this time. And so that's just a kind of a upbeat thing that's happened here in Merced.
Absolutely, more silver linings, and I think the connection between arts and racial justice is really, again, one of the sort of, when we talk about where can we integrate arts and what is the impact and importance of why we need arts in every community, we know that is certainly one of the critical areas and one of the crises that we're in right now. And so thank you for sharing that work. We want to honor people's time. It's 3:03. I want to thank Jennifer and Kara for their leadership on our board for pulling this together, for Jade Alicia for her pulling all for their putting everything together as well. Thank you. And to thank everyone for taking the time to share with us. I can just assure you that this really does inform our work. It really inspires me. I have a call today with Sydney Kamlager's office. It really helps me to really position and honestly pitch and sell the arts when I hear from all of you and what you're doing and the extraordinary work that you're doing. And it really just, I want you to understand how much that really does inform our work. So thank you for taking the time. Again, my email is julie@californiansforthearts.org. Please continue the conversation with us. More things, share your wonderful programs. We would love to amplify those as well. And again, if any measurable data that you can have is really, really critical. So think about that in the development of your programs. How can you measure the impact of what you're doing is really helpful in developing our cases. So with that, thanks again to our Dan and Tony and Alex for sharing. Again, so inspiring, and everybody else here. So have a great afternoon and stay safe out there. Thank you.